on this.
Got it.
Hello, everybody.
Howdy.
I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of screen sharing. I'm working on the tablet this evening, so forgive me. Let's see, let's share that part. That should work. Okay, so working on the tablet this evening, which is not something I spend a lot of time with Zoom. So forgive me if it's a little awkward, but I wanted to go ahead and start with a couple of things here. I'm going to drop this first one, if I can find Zoom again. There we go. All right, so we're going to go ahead and cover a couple of things. I'm going to start with dropping a link in the chat here. And what this is kind of the site map to a lot of the Google stuff that I have pulled together. So this is, to me at least, it's the easiest place to find this stuff. It works kind of nicely. You can take this and you can save the link on your home screen. And then you can work, and hopefully everybody can see my web page up. If I'm doing this correctly?
Not currently.
Not currently? All right, let me go back and look and see on that.
Right now.
Okay. Share screen. Start now. Better?
It switches to, I think, your profile on your tablet's image.
Okay. Let's see if it'll let me bring up Chrome. This is going to make for very exciting YouTube viewing.
It can be edited out.
Technical difficulty.
Perfect. How about now? Can you guys see it?
Nope.
Okay. Is there somebody who has screen sharing abilities that can bring up the link that I just posted in the chat box? And I'll just talk you guys through it.
Okay. Are we trying that?
Yeah, go for it.
Hold on.
You're trying it, Sunwolf?
Trying.
Okay.
Fingers crossed, nothing awkward happens. Okay.
Excellent. Okay. So this is a fairly simple thing. I want to show you guys a couple of things. For the non-techie crew, Sunwolf, do you see the button at the top where it says how to use various apps?
Yes.
Can you go ahead and click on that one?
Certainly.
So if you guys look at the left-hand side of this, and if you're ever going through and looking at this on a phone, in order to get these drop-down menus, you have to click on the little three bars that usually will come up in the upper left-hand corner. But you can see, if I go ahead and scroll down a little bit for me, you can see what we've gone through is looked at a lot of the tech and the programs that exist that are useful, and tried to put together some really simple things. I'll be honest to you guys, Google Bard wrote most of this copy. But for each of the programs, we've got a simple description on how to do it. Towards the top, there's usually a YouTube video or a PowerPoint presentation for the folks who would rather see things a little more visually, that you can go through and do it. And then scattered through, there's some simple things like, if you've never worked, if you don't have a West Kingdom Google account and you would like to have access to Google Suite, there's a button that tells you how to request an account. And you can go through and poke through this particular subset. It's really designed for users that don't have a lot of experience and are interested in getting started with something. You know, even down to Discord and TikTok. If you want to do really advanced stuff, there's much better ways to learn. But if you just want to, hey, tech is a little scary to me, but I want to participate in the online SCA, or I want to understand what people are talking about, this is some of the stuff there. I mean, even down to the level of, we've got some descriptions on the West Kingdom history site and some links. I know Hirsch is doing a class on that more in depth later, but that's kind of a little bit of an opener. So does anybody have any general questions on the how to app site for the time being? Okay, and hearing none of those, if you can go back to the West Kingdom Google site, which there's a button at the very top actually header, there's a West Kingdom Google site map, you got it. Perfect. So this is sort of the collection of a lot of the resources that we have. There are some simple buttons in place, and try to find words that people will pick up on. And this is really designed to be phone friendly and kind of mimic an app. I have my my Zoomer daughter look at stuff and go, okay, is this visually appealing to you as a Zoomer? She's like, yes, it's okay. There is some more in depth on the left hand in the drop down menu. There's some more in-depth broken down things. Laws and law enforcement, paperwork, youth programs, all of those sorts of things. So what I actually want to do, if you scroll up a little, if you were coming here and you were looking for event stored resources and an aspiring event steward, Sunwolf, can you look through some of those buttons and see what button you think might be useful? There you go.
Here we go.
Tried to keep it simple. Let's go ahead and go to that page. So there's a couple of things. This page that first comes up, I was talking about this at the beginning, maybe even before we were recording, but this is a site that was put together by Katrina several years ago that goes through and lays out a timeline for the things that event stewards can do. And each of those buttons that you click will take you to what you need to do on the timeline wise. I will tell you, for my taste, I think some of these timeframes are a little tight. I would spread them out a little bit more. But again, I tend to do a lot of specialty events where you need to do a lot of early planning and promotion and pull stuff together in some of the more complex events. So I'm going to work from a slightly different one, but this is a really good, if you are not a I like a lot of words person, this is really well designed and a good tool and worth exploring. If you look down on the menu on the left-hand side, we've got a resources and on-demand classes. Can you go ahead and click that little caret so that we open up yeah, there we go. So here's some of the things that are in there. We've got a whole bunch of different sites that you can go to. Yep, that's exactly the one I'm going to take you guys to. So these are the event stored handbooks that live on the Canali webpage.
I don't think I'm going to be able to want me to do anyway.
Okay. So there are a bunch of these. They're written in Google. Different groups have taken them and gone through and modified them. And what these are based on, once upon a time, there was a Sonogwin autocrat handbook. The version that I started from was the 2007 version, although it was much older than that initially. And this is how I learned to be an event steward. So there's the button that's down a little bit that says the Canali Event Steward Handbook. If you want to click on that one. Okay. So this within it has some clickable links. If anybody would like to build one for their branch, go ahead and get in contact with me and I'll give you a copy that you can edit to your heart's content. There's also the ability to go through and comment on this one. And so what we've got is that timeline set out just a little bit differently. Like I said, the previous timeline started at 12 months. Some of the specialty events, I'll run those things out as far as 12 to 18 months. And so just a little more extended time frame. And this has got a little more detail and some more words. It has most of the same links and things you can go to, and it's a living document. I go through, I noticed something in today that needed to change. So this is a starting place, but today we're really talking about promotion. So what I'm going to do is have you go ahead and scroll down a little bit. Actually, not even too far. Go ahead and scroll up a little. Okay, number 5. You click on that.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Open.
Yeah, suddenly it's not a website anymore.
Yeah, maybe
okay.
Right click.
Yeah. So this is kind of a written out version. And I think there's some really important details in here. And I'm going to put, a lot of this was actually written by Helga, who is amazing at promoting stuff. But I want to talk about one thing. Occasionally with events, people will talk about marketing events. And I take a slightly different view. To me, marketing in part is kind of convincing people they want what you have. I think a lot of times the strongest thing that we can do as stewards or anyone doing promotion in the SCA is more sales. And sales is about relationships and finding out what your customer wants and find a way to provide that to them. So that's sort of the thought process that I bring to this sort of thing. When you're looking at promotion in general, this is kind of a good overview. It gives a lot of the different ways that you can cover announcements. You can get stuff out with court announcements. You can go through and do things on social media. I am going to go ahead and plug, Sarah is running a event in August that is really designed as sort of a tech symposium. And I've seen the speakers for that. You've got folks coming in who are really excellent at all of these different areas. And if you want to learn more about how in detail to do those promotion, that would be a great one to attend. But this
It's
is sort of the
postponed a little bit.
view.
Elsie, sorry.
Is it postponed a little? Okay.
Just a little until just for my personal thing, but it'll come back, I promise.
Okay, so eventually there will be a really awesome thing to teach you how to use all of these tools in excruciating detail from folks with much more expertise than I have. But we're going to stay at the 10,000 foot level today. Let's go ahead and scroll down a little on the promotion. There are a couple of good points. I really do like the idea that when you're trying to get people to attend your event, do not, no matter how Irish your grandmother was, do not use guilt. Okay, my grandmother was a master of guilt, but you don't want to do that to get people there. You want to talk about how amazing things are. You want to provide them with content. You want to highlight the stuff that you're going to be doing that's fantastic, because ultimately we all do this because it's a hobby and most of us want to enjoy our hobbies. So the more we can focus in on promoting that enjoyment and letting folks know, you actually wind up with a really positive snowball effect. You might be able to get people to guilt people into attending an event or two, but what happens is we have retention problems when we fall back on that as our routine thing. So much better promoting the positive. So in terms of information and what you need to have, I am actually a big fan of partial information is okay. You do eventually have to get the whole information out there, and you can't do it at the last minute. You know, if you are doing a required pre-sale for an event, let's say you're doing a feast or a major war, I think it helps to have a schedule that you can send out. You need to have stuff planned and let folks know what it is you're trying to get them to buy in advance. 6 months out, it's okay to let people know, hey, we've got this site, we've got this place that we're going.
So cute. Oh, Draper now. Thank you, baby. Thank you, Draper.
Before we get too much further, you actually have to have some detail. You know, I am someone, because I travel a lot for work, I make my decisions about what events I'm going to 3 to 4 months out. And so if I have the information before then, it's going to increase the likelihood that I go to your event. I am not the only person who does things that way. Now, I can't only release information 3 to 4 months out. I have to come back at different time frames and go ahead and tell people again, including sometimes, you know, for those last minute folks who are just waking up, you know, I'll go out and do some promo posts the day of. I will do event announcements and make sure that everybody's on board. But each of, not only there's some generational trends in how you have to promote, there are some preference of your attendees trends. And you're going to get the best participation if you communicate with each person the way they want to be communicated with. And that includes time frame. I'll go ahead and scroll down a little bit. So one of the things that's important, you know, I think we've all gotten to the point, especially the last few years, right? We're living on social media. And there are things that work well on social media, short sound bites. You know, an hour-long class on something is not going to be something that's going to get a lot of traction on TikTok. But at some point, you need to have the information where people can find it. If you have an amazing reputation, maybe people will take the quality of your event on faith. But for the rest of us, it really helps us if we can go ahead and have something where people can find it. It can be as simple as publishing a schedule somewhere. It can be extra information that we put in the Kingdom calendar copy. I'm going to make a case for doing websites here towards the last part of the class with some stuff that Tara's helping out with. But having some splashy stuff that gives good, solid information is really important. And here's why. There are the people who want the detailed description, either because they themselves are planning, because maybe they've gone to some events and not had a great time because their favorite activities didn't happen. But if they know their activity's happening, then they're more likely to show up. I've also found for folks that have some anxiety about the unknown, if you can get out a description that's really centered on the person and how they look at the world, that's going to make life easier on them. This applies not only to newcomers, this applies to a lot of us still coming back to in-person stuff after the pandemic. It applies to new events. It applies to the fact that every time we change our royalty over, our events change a little bit. So if you can let folks know what's coming because we don't have a constant culture, that's going to make life easier for them. Try to avoid jargon as much as possible. There's some common language that we have, but just like if you're communicating with newcomers, you want to limit how much SCAEs you use. And if you do feel a need to use the word like Eric, you may want to follow it up with an explanation. Our town square that we gather all our pavilions around where the fighting happens. And put all of those details in there. The other thing that can work pretty well, and if you want to go ahead and scroll down, when you are promoting, especially on things like social media or even tying your website in, having some good promotional images. If you've got teachers coming, really things that pop and make people stop the doom scroll and maybe read the class descriptions, that's the kind of thing that's going to get folks to your event. And when you're doing teaching events, we have to pull in more than just the teachers, otherwise there are no students. One of my favorite things about doing stuff with the cooks is the cooks are big fans of making sure they have eaters. The more that we can take our events and we can reach out beyond just the obvious target audience, the more enjoyable it is as everybody comes together and we have a really good time. I give some suggestions on some simple places that you can go get photos and some photographers. I actually should probably expand that. There's a few more folks out there that do that now. If you want to go down period images, there's some good places you can pull those from. The nice thing is those are largely free of copyright. So you've got some work there. I even have a couple of events that I've done where I've gone to a graphic designer on Fiverr and I've said, hey, this is my thought, that is my thought, can you build me something? If you do not have those skills yourself and that's a route you want to go, you can. You can also reach out to your friends. We have a lot of friends that have those skill sets and go, hey, I need this, this, and that. And so sometimes once you have that image, you have a couple choices. You can use that same image over and over again and you kind of brand your event and people learn to associate that image with, or you can change out your photos on a fairly regular basis, which will keep things a little bit fresh. I've done a little bit of both, depending on which the event is and what I'm trying to reach out for. So you can make either one of those work fairly well for you. Go ahead and scroll down. So I think my favorite thing about this particular thing, that is so not my word, but you want to promote a modern festival, right? This is something enjoyable. We are competing with so many other things that people could do that weekend that we want to let them know what's going on. We want to take what's unique about it and promote it out there. I'm focusing in a lot on events that the royalty may or may not be involved with. Sometimes your royalty, if you're doing something that's, say, a crown, coronation, investiture, coronet, one of those things, or a baronial event, you've got the royalty to help out with some of the promotion. But a lot of what you have to do is sort of herd the cats and everything in line to make it simple. So for anybody who's going to come through and follow this guide for Oh, actually, I do have prepayment. I did fix that part. Okay. I was just going to point out where the mistake was, but I did actually get that part fixed. So that's the overview on that. Do we have any general questions on promotion at this point? Okay. Haven't heard any. Kira, do I have you back yet?
I see her here on a phone, but I don't know if stuff is working.
Okay. Well, what we can do,
Technical difficulties. Hang in there, everybody.
It wasn't my fault. I'm so relieved.
You mean this time?
There we go.
All right.
See if I can bring up something that looks like a normal screen. There we go. Okay. Yeah. So now that I'm back, can we go ahead and bring the Google Sitemap tab back up?
Let's see how we're going to get up. Oop,
yeah.
This one.
Yep, perfect. And what I'm going to do, I just was messing around with this the other day. So if Tira's not here, I think I can get some of this a different way. But if we can go on the, where did I put that? Might be under the Webminister tab.
Is that, there it is.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, under the drop-down menu, it says Google Sites Template Drive. Go ahead and look there. So this is something that we're just starting to work on, is having some pre-done site templates that folks can go ahead and work from and use as a starting place. So if you want to go ahead and open up the event-related folder, and I haven't tested this, sometimes nothing succeeds like a generation, but let's go ahead and open up, that'll work. If we can go ahead and pull one of those templates, make a copy, and we'll have you open it up and play with it. Probably have to go back to where we were in the drive. So it's just basically showing you the site at this point. But if we go back, and are you on a computer or a tablet?
We're on a computer. We'll be right there.
Okay, perfect.
There we go.
Yep, there we go. So the eventual goal is to have some templates, not only for Google Sites, but some of the other Google tools and spreadsheets and stuff like that, so people can make a copy and go ahead and start doing things themselves. We should be able to go ahead and close that add content button. I'll talk you through it. So this is a very simple one that's set up for a collegium. The last couple of collegiums have looked very similar to this. We had a similar website for A&S Tourney. This was actually some work that Selena put together for us. You got the nice simple welcome. Up on the upper left-hand corner, where it says copy of event template, you can go ahead and change that to the name of whatever you want your fake event to be. Yay! Okay, so if you've got your words and your page copy, you can just post it. You can paste it right in that text box. If you don't have stuff written out, you can say whatever cool thing you want to say. And just out of curiosity, Sunwell, have you ever worked in Google Sites before?
Not really.
Yeah, okay. And that was one of the reasons I asked. So I've been involved in the web team for years. I'm the token Luddite. Years ago, they figured out if they can explain it to me, there might be a hope of other users being able to do it. But they start occasionally talking computer at me. And I'm like, I'm a biologist. I don't know any of those words. But what I like about working in this particular program is it's not all that different than working in a word processing program. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen, you have some choices in terms of things you can insert, including you can use pictures. We talked a little bit about using images for promotion. You can go ahead and put in images. You can embed documents that you've done. Like if you think back to where we were working with the event steward guides, that's something I just embedded into the web page by very simply sharing links and stuff like that. So there's a lot of adaptability out here, and it doesn't get you into too much trouble. The nice thing is you work in this draft, and when you're happy with where it is with the draft, then you can publish it publicly. So everybody doesn't get to see all your mistakes as you're going. You've got a safe place to work. Yep. And there are a couple tricks. The big thing that you have to remember to do is you have to remember that make sure that all your security settings are such that everybody in the world can see it. And that will be something you can adjust when you publish. You can also go to the little sprocket that's settings. Yep. And it will go through, oh, this one doesn't. Okay, this is actually the little plus person sign for this particular program. And you can go through and set the access to the various things that you want it to be. So, yep, perfect. And the nice thing is, once you have this done, you can go ahead and it's published. You go ahead and you can have that URL. And this gives you a static place to share all the information you want for your event. You can do things like embed Google Forms and tell people that, hey, if they have things that they want to share out to the world, they can just fill out that Google form and you can go ahead and that becomes a, a lot of times that what we'll do is we'll actually embed the spreadsheet and that information goes across. So if you guys have ever taught classes at collegiums in the last few years, or maybe during the pandemic, a lot of times we'd have you fill out that Google form and then the steward can use that to generate all the class lists for the teachers. And it makes it a really simple way to do that. And then we can take that information that as it's coming in, when I've done promo slides for things, I just copy and paste the information out of there. I read your class descriptions and sometimes I just plug that into Google and see what images come up. And that's how the promo slides come together. So it's a really adaptable way to do. You can also just keep it as a simple one page. But here's the important thing. And it talks about this in the Event Steward Guide. Whatever you share in one platform, you want to kind of share across everywhere. You may change the details a little bit. My personal preference is I try to keep the website completely up to date with all the information so that the people who are really focused and interested can go find that. And then I'll share simpler versions of that with out on my other platforms as I'm doing promotion. But I'll always have that website that people can come back to. So let's see. I know, we'll show you a cool thing. So if you can go under the Pages tab on the right-hand side.
Oh, got it.
Yep, you got it. So, yep, go to the little three dots. So you can duplicate this page and it will give you exactly the same thing. So if you've got a page you like and you want to do more of that, you can. You can also add a subpage to it. So if I want to have something nested, that's how we create sort of some of those nested menus. We'll go through and do stuff like that. I can also nest things. Go ahead and back off of the current menu. Go ahead and take that directions sign and just kind of lift it up and let's put it over schedule so that it'll nest itself. You can just drag it up on top of schedule. There you go. So that would be another way that you can nest things. If you go to the plus sign at the bottom, so these are some options on things you can do. I can put menus into this menu. So I can put just a little divider. It doesn't necessarily have to be a whole page. I can also, and this is how a lot of the stuff is done in the Google Sitemap, I can go ahead, if I want to link to an existing page, like let's say I want to be able to link to the Facebook page for the event. I can put that new link button. I can go ahead and click on that. I can type a name for it. I can paste the link in, and it will go ahead and add that to my menu. I really am a big fan of not only having things as buttons on the site, but having it in the drop-down menu, because I find that people tend to navigate sort of both ways, depending on who the user is. And having those drop-down menus makes these things a lot more phone-friendly than going through and having just a massive wall of links. So those are some options that you can put into play. It's fairly adaptable under the themes, and yeah, and this will, if you want to do a link within the existing pages, you can click on them there. You can do the same thing with linking to buttons under the Insert tab. So let's go to themes. So if you have colors that you want to play with, or you want to make a lot of adaptation and do a lot of formatting stuff, this themes tab is where you can do that. There's a bunch of pre-programmed ones, or you can do custom themes. Currently, it's a custom theme that says West Kingdom, but you can change that, and that's where you can go ahead and make all your choices about what sort of fonts you want to use and all of those details. So pretty adaptable. Any questions on that? Okay. So that is kind of my base one on that. Does anybody want to cover a little bit on promo slides, or do you want to talk about how we get all this wonderful content so we have something to share? On to wonderful content. Let's go ahead and stop your screen share. Thank you so much for doing that for me. So the next component of this is, it's great. We now know, we're kind of working backwards, right? So we started with, how do we tell people about what we're doing? And then we went, hey, where do we create a platform that contains that information? Now the next thing is, where do we come up with some content, right? Or more importantly, depending on what kind of event you're doing. If you're doing a little local event, you may have to generate your own stuff that's happening. If you're in charge of running a kingdom or principality event, the officers and the populace tend to come up with stuff, but they're terrible at telling people what that stuff's going to be. And so this is where you can serve a really important role in being a clearinghouse for information. But first you have to get them to tell you what it is that they're going to do. So we touched upon the idea of creating Google Forms. And that's a good passive way to collect information, and that will, the hyper-organized people will come find you and they will fill those out. That is not all of our people. So what I really like to do is I like to reach out to people personally and individually. There are some tricks. So if you send a mass email or a mass Facebook PM to the vast majority of our folks, a good chunk of them won't read it, okay? But if you type up a script in your favorite word processing program and you copy that script and you paste it into an individual email or an individual Facebook message, and you change a couple of details so it's personalized, you can actually send the same information out to people almost as fast as doing a mass email, and you greatly increase the likelihood that they're going to respond to you. You know, I watched, going into this last arts and sciences tournament, I watched some folks really take that technique and use it for teacher recruitment, and the amount of classes they came up with was amazing. You know, that personal approach, most of us are pretty good it ignoring a general call for something. But if somebody actually comes and asks us individually for help, we're going to respond. Then one of the things that's really important when you get that information and it comes back to you in Facebook Messenger, which doesn't last long, it's going to keep scrolling, that conversation with that friend, or even in the email, make sure that you capture that information, you put it somewhere. I personally, as we are all aware, I'm a really big fan of spreadsheets. So what I do for these sorts of things is I'll keep a Google sheet that I plug all of that information into. If your organizational brain works differently, there's nothing magic about spreadsheets, but make sure you capture that information, put it somewhere static. You know, it's possible if you're working at your computer all the time, it may be just as easy for you to stick that onto your web page if somebody promises to do something, and so you're building that calendar in place. I work on my phone a lot of the time, and the web pages are a little difficult on the phone. So that's why I tend to stick stuff in a spreadsheet, because there's an app for that. So that's one step that can come into play. As you start to get information in building a schedule, push that information out to people. There is a subset of folks that want to do something, but they don't want to conflict with something else. You know, so, you know, for example, if you are planning something at a Crown event that it's really important for you that the members of the chivalry are going to be there, you're probably not going to schedule it during Shiv Council. You as an activity planner don't have a lot of control over when that happens. So what you do is you sit back and you wait until someone says when Shiv Council is. Once you know when Shiv Council is, then everybody posts their information out, and that goes forth from there and things build. So if you can, if you're doing an event where the royalty are involved in running it, if you can reach out to them and their head of court early and try to get information, even if it's just partial information. Hey, do you guys know when you're having your peerage meetings? You know, you can go ahead and start to slate that information in. You know, is there anything special you want to do for your attorney? Are you holding a Queen's Champion tourney after your coronation? And start to kind of put those bits and pieces into the schedule. Then what you'll find, right? So we've got a few people that will fill out your Google form. We've got some people, you know, maybe officers, maybe other people you've approached privately that will get you information. As the schedule starts to come together and you start to push that information out to people, people will realize they have permission to tell you what it is they were planning on doing. Generally, what they will do is they will do this somewhere on Facebook. Currently, that's going to change as Facebook changes. It used to be they did it on the Yahoo group. So you're going to see it in the event section. You're going to see it scroll past on the Kingdom page. People will kind of put stuff out, and that's them, believe it or not, trying to tell you what they're doing. They don't always know to come talk to the event steward directly. Some will come find you. But if you see that information, capture it together. Just like you did with your PM responses, put it the places it needs to go. Put that information out and just keep that information flowing back and forth. You know, we need to communicate forward and communicate back. And then all this stuff comes together. And through the process of you sharing a lot of these things and other people sharing things, it actually starts to build a lot of buzz for your event, especially if you start it with enough lead time. So, questions? This is an evil teacher trick that Heinrich taught me, by the way, where you just sit and you stare at the students and you wait for them to actually say something. So, okay, I've done a lot of talking. I do know that we actually have some folks that, even if they haven't run events, they've actually done, they've publicized activities that they've done promotion outside the SCA. What I want to hear is some of the tips and tricks you guys have used and what's worked for you, and maybe let's brainstorm on what hasn't and how we can improve from there. True. How about you, Tara? You're an experienced event steward.
It's having some serious Facebook/Zoom issues today. But I'm on now. I don't, for some reason. Yeah, anyway, technology was not my friend earlier, but.
That's okay. I had so much on. So what's worked for you in terms of getting the word out, and what have you struggled with?
I mean, I mean, it works for me to post on Facebook and just like be a cheerleader for things. But as far as like, if it generates actual interest and people showing up to event, I don't know. Because most of the events I've done are Principality or other events that have people that inherently are joining. So I can't speak to how well it actually got the information out. But as far as how I like to communicate, I like to do Facebook basically like reminders and like make sure people know there's a schedule. I'm like big on schedules now. Like having a schedule of the day as an attendee makes me happy so that I know when things are going on and what I can have time for, and I can plan out my event, especially if I know there's things I'm interested in. And I like making schedules for other people for the same reason.
Yeah. So when you've done Principality events, did you find that it was easy to get officer responses, or did you find that you didn't get much?
It really depends on the officer.
Yeah.
And I think that's more just like interpersonal. Some people are good at, and I always do things a personal message to each person, like you were talking about before. I don't try to do group messages because people don't, or if you send out a group message, all you get is a bunch of thumbs ups or heart emojis on the thing you posted instead of responses. But if you actually send a message to someone, usually if there's actually something they need to respond to, they're going to give you a response, versus in a group setting where people just are like, yeah, sure, I read it. Here's my acknowledgement of reading it, and then don't actually give you the information you need.
The other trick I have is actually something I picked up from work. If you are not getting responses from people to an open-ended thing, some people get afraid of the blank page, and the idea of coming up with a response just kind of freezes them in place. But I do sometimes find that if I type out sort of what I think they're going to want, and I say, hey, how about, do you need this, this, and this at this time? For example, messaging with the marshal in charge of a tournament. Hey, I assume you want to have your marshals meeting at 9, armor inspection runs till about 10:30, and invocation to follow. And then just ask for a yes or no. I've also had, for stuff where it's sort of that pattern, that set pattern and those big pieces you're trying to get initially, sometimes I've had better luck with using that as an approach than a general, hey, do you want to do anything at this event? So hopefully that'll help someone.
Yeah, the schedule the same. Like I started with the previous, so like investiture, I helped with the schedule for that. So we started with where the previous times, and then we tweaked them to work for what we had going on. Because when I just asked, like, what time do you want this stuff to happen? They're like, oh, I don't know. So having a starting place helped a lot.
Yep. Yeah. One of the things that I'm hoping to get to with the templates, and we've been able to do this a little bit with some of the stuff that's coming up with Miss Coronets. We've had several Miss Coronets in a row use the same template. And so they're able to take, hey, here's what the schedule is when we did this 6 months ago, to go from there. My hope is we can get some of these things more prevalent. Our stewards won't have to be starting from scratch each time, and they can tweak and they can change, but for the big events that occur regularly, some of this stuff really does have a pretty set pattern. And then you've got that already existing language, which will make life hopefully a little more streamlined, both for the officers and for the event stewards. How about you, Sarah? You've run a lot of events.
One of the biggest things I have noticed, and that's my daily life and here, is people don't really want to read. So keeping things short and concise and to the point, which is against every fiber of my being. I want to give everybody everything because that's how my brain works. But that is not how people are. So sometimes the shorter and the more to the point, that is good. And I also remind everybody too that most of the time when you're working, like you're doing your event and working on your event, they might be at work. So have some patience too.
Yep. The couple things that I've found that have been useful, because I like using all the words too. I do know how to use sound bites, but that's not as much fun. But a couple things I found. One is a work trick that I use for writing emails to executives trying to condense the most important vital information into the first sentence, maybe two, if I have a lot of stuff to say. And even bullets pointing that, even on social media, you know, use the emojis, use fingers to hit those bullet points so that it breaks things up visually for folks. And then keep your longer information other places. I am a big fan when I'm doing these simple websites. You'll notice the one that Talina put together for Collegium, there's a lot of pieces. I like to link all of those pages together in a way that's easy. It's almost impossible for a user not to figure out how to get from one page to another. I like no more information on a given page than I would put on a t-shirt. So I will even take screenshots of my pages to see if they look visually appealing as a screenshot. And for things where I like to share a lot of information, I'm actually a big fan of using the drop-down things. And I try to put very short, important words into the part that sits on the page. And then my more effusive, wanting to share all the words with everyone, I'll put that into the part that gets hidden. So when the screen comes up, it's not, oh my God, there's a wall of text on my phone. It's, oh, hey, here's all these choices. Lots of people aren't going to read the details, but some will. And the folks who really want that more detailed information will click on those things. So that, you know, you're in my soulmates, Sarah, who actually wanted all those pieces.
Yeah, but it's hard because as soon as you'll post all the information, regardless of where you put it,
yep,
you'll put it 5 different places, the same thing, and someone will still go into the event, into the West Kingdom Facebook group, and they'll still ask the question. So it's also helpful if you can tie it back in, right? All of the information can be found. Here's the event, or if you have questions, email so-and-so and keep it consistent.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's important to remember, because it can be really frustrating as an information provider to say, oh, I just wrote all that out. Why don't they get it? One, have a friend that you can gripe to offline. That's sometimes important as a venting valve. But the other thing is, if people are starting discussions on your posts on Facebook, that's actually great, because comments mean your posts get shared to more people. I have been known on occasion, and when I do promotional stuff, I don't always make my images the clearest in the world. And the fact that people are going to comment and complain that, oh, I don't know how to use a QR code, well, that gives me a reason to share the link, because Facebook doesn't like URLs. Or if they have a question, or if they have, gee, I'd rather see it this way, I can start a discussion. And if you can get a bunch of comments going, then more people see your post. You know, and that's actually something that, as folks that are interested in doing these sorts of things, you can actually click like and love and positive reactions on your friends' posts, make comments, stuff like that that's going to help to get their event seen more, especially for the little branches. If you've got a little branch or a pet event, you know, Wargy is your jam. When posts come up about Wargy, you know, talk about it, like it, share it, comment on it. All of those things are going to help get that reach and that communication out there a little bit better. Which brings me around to another thing. When I was talking about this, and we've got looking at the names on here, I think we've got a fair number of folks who have reasonable tech experience, but there are a lot of folks out there who aren't as tech savvy or as tech adventurous, I think maybe is the term I want. So we started with that how to app website as a starting place. If you yourself are tech savvy and like doing these things, I know it's something Tira is really starting to look into. I know Sarah's done some event promotion. I've done event promotion. You as an event steward do not have to do this tech stuff yourself. There are people who are willing to do it. There are folks who like working away from events so that they can spend their events enjoying the time. And as you reach out to some of those folks and get involved, you can delegate that. I personally, when a lot of my event stewarding, I am not in charge of the privies. I have a privy patrol, and I have someone who goes through and takes care of that for me. So you can take any of these pieces of being an event steward and you can delegate it to someone who's really excited about doing that project. And maybe there's something else they don't like. Maybe they don't like scouting sites. Maybe they don't like handling complaints. but maybe promotion's really their jam, or maybe, you know, going through and building a spreadsheet is no big deal to them and they're happy to do that. The thing that I will add as a caveat to that, for event promotion, you do need to make sure you keep up communication with that person. If I can build the best website in the world, if everybody's telling the event steward what they're doing and nobody tells the web person how to update it, then it's not actually going to be a useful website. If everybody comes to you as a steward and you're never sharing that URL so people can find it, it's not going to be a useful website. So you've got to have back and forth and communication in all of those things. Do we have anybody else who would like to share their experience working as a steward or promoting things? Doesn't have to be in the SCA. I know some of you have volunteer experience from before you started playing. Sounds like I've answered all your questions. If no one has anything to add, we can probably go ahead and stop the recording, Sarah.